Oi oi, it's your boy, Big Fight Jack, and I'm pretty ecstatic to be back because we got a proper UFC pay-per-view lined up. And I'm not talking about one of those pretender UFC pay-per-views that we've had the last few years. I'm talking about a real hard dick, blood pumping, gets your bloodlust going, look at the names on this card, stuff to actually care about, stuff to actually write about. I actually wrote an article this week because I'm so excited, kind of pay-per-view. Of course, this event will happen, and then there'll be like 9 bad pay-per-views, and people will keep excusing it by going, this is what we do to get UFC 300, or whatever this one's numbered. But it's looking pretty good. And it's also pretty interesting, because this is one where people are interested for meritocracy reasons. This is not... Islam Makhachev is not a beacon of charisma, neither is Arman Tsarukyan. Merab Dvalishvili is not in any way a great talker, neither is Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, you got the sort of freaky Caucasus fetishism going on, but they're all here because they're the best, and we just want to see that. And I'm saying, let's get back to that. That's what I want. That's all I want. There's also a load of other stuff on this card that's pretty interesting. There's a few names like being said. I mean, Peyton Talbot's supposed to smash an old Rani Barcelos, and there's a few things like that. But there's also some great matchups. So let's start at the top. If you haven't read the article, go and read the article. It's free for everyone. It's called Lessons from Makhachev versus Tsarukyan 1. Naturally, it focuses on the first fight. Talk a little bit about like their improvements and not improvements since that first fight in various areas. But the first fight obviously was very clinch heavy, very scramble heavy. There was very little striking going on. And it was 2 rounds of just awesome back and forth action. And then the last round, Tsarukyan hit a wall, and Makhachev didn't damage him in any way. He just sort of took over by being able to get him down. If you watch the takedowns in the third round, they get to the over it by the fence, and Makhachev just drops on his hips and locks hands double, classic Greg Jackson philosophy, the strongest takedown in MMA. But to do that when someone's got an underhook means like tiring them out, because basically Makhachev just slides down over his arm, locks his hands, picks him up twice, and you can see that Tsarukyan's just there panting basically. Where up to that point he'd been just incredibly difficult to get down, incredibly difficult to keep down. And I mentioned in the article my thoughts on butterfly guard, on elevators, on staying out in the open to create scrambles. You'll notice in that fight, Tsarukyan, when he tried to wall walk, he got stuck. And it's not, I say this every time, but it's not that you can't wall walk up. It's a very powerful position, and you will get up eventually. But it does mean that they can go into that awful cycle of riding your ankles, then you turn to your hands, they're riding the wrist, they're trying to fold you down on your side and punch you, you turn your back, they jump on your back and try and choke you. You know, it's not just that it's like they'll stall you getting up, but also, if you make a mistake at any point, there's a load of bad stuff that can happen to you, and it's still going to take you time if you do everything perfect to get back up. So Tsarukyan out in the open was where he had success with his butterflies and so on. And it wasn't even like butterfly sweeping, it was butterfly elevating and then turning in on takedown attempts. Scrambling up. Wrestling up. That's the modern parlance for it in jiu-jitsu circles. I also mentioned how much I thought it was interesting, because people always say, like, no one throws enough strikes in the clinch. And then you'll watch, like, I love Benson Henderson, but I'm going to use him as a bad example. Like his front kicks to the shin in the clinch or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I get that that's annoying, and maybe after 50 or 60, they're going to start feeling it. But what people want is, like, good knees that do stuff. And even, like, I'm not going to say, like, oh, everyone just needs to go to Thailand and learn to knee, because even if you watch Stadium Muay Thai, there are a lot of knees that don't do a lot. You know, the big throw your leg out to the side and whip it in knee, that's there because people can't score good knees in the clinch, so they do stuff that visually scores. Good knees are like what Makhachev does with his back to the fence. DJ used to do it all the time. You watch them dig the kneecap in to the midsection, and it's only a short distance, but the other guy will go, ooh. And then the other guy will go, right, I'm kneeing you back. And that's when Makhachev hits his whizzer throw, or DJ starts sliding out with the double collar tie. But good knees in short supply, good elbows in short supply from the clinch. So it was really cool to watch Makhachev and Tsarukyan using knees against each other from the clinch, and also using it to set stuff up. So Makhachev used it to get Tsarukyan blocking the knee across himself, and then grabbed that wrist and used it to throw him with the Sasai Surakomi Ashi. And Tsarukyan, then later in the fight, he goes really, he bends over to block Makhachev's knees at the waist. If you put your forearm across both thighs, basically, the guy's not going to be able to knee you in the body. But his head's so far forward that he's like asking to be kneed in the head. But when someone goes to knee you, they have to take a little step first because they're going to balance themselves on one leg. So you can watch in the footage, the moment that Makhachev steps in ready to knee him in the head, Tsarukyan's already like standing upright, getting his hand underneath where Makhachev's knee is going to be. If you watch it in slow motion, it's fantastic, and he turns him onto the fence. So it's all knees, not an awful lot of elbows, even like the uppercut to the body from the over-under. You'll remember Kamaru Usman doing that against Tyron Woodley loads. But Makhachev was doing that. If Tsarukyan was trying to stop the knees with his own knees, Makhachev would just start punching him in the ribs. So that was all cool. Like, the clinch fighting was off the chain, the wrestling on the ground, the grappling on the ground. Do you know what I loved? You got to see Makhachev get taken down. And I always think that Makhachev's a really interesting study for bad positions, because you know that he's spent his whole life as the training partner to Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's been the nail to like the best hammer, grappling-wise. So the fact that he relies so heavily on the overhook throws along the fence makes me think made me think like 5 years ago, that's a really important factor. And now you're seeing it play out. Like, dudes are working out that throwing off the fence is one of the best answers to being pushed to the fence. And on the bottom, you got to think Makhachev spent a lot of time underneath Khabib, but when Tsarukyan got him down, it's incredible. He just never stops fighting. He's got one overhook, he's being pulled down onto his back, and then he releases the overhook, sits across his butt from cheek to cheek, as we sometimes say, or hip to hip, and switches to the other overhook, and then he gives up the overhook and turns to his hands and starts crawling towards the fence, and it all happens in about 5 seconds, but he's so calm. And I might have mentioned this on the last podcast, but when I was because I was watching the fight before recording that, but it's a real great example of, like, it's not that he's moving fast, it's not that his opponent's slow, it's that everything's being done at the right time. He tries this, he gives it up. He tries that, he gives it up. He goes to his hands, he starts crawling towards the fence, and he just looks so calm the entire time. And I think that's the secret of, like, correct technique, or the best technique. It's not too early, it's not too late, it's right on time. So the real absent thing in the first fight was the striking. And Tsarukyan's had a lot of success since then in the striking, and Makhachev obviously has had tons of success since then, but he also had a scrap with Dustin Poirier in his last one.